because at that point, my contractor had run off with the first draw, and that first draw game was way bigger than it should have been.
Substantial amount.
And so I was like, hey, I need some more cash to replace that draw that he took. When a deal comes along, I have to then start research.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's gone.
Yeah.
Right. And knowing kind of like what a deal looks like, even before it comes across.
Helps out a lot.
Yeah. And so you can pounce. You can pounce relatively quickly. You can make confident offers.
Welcome back to the Investor Unite podcast, where we talk all things real estate, business, and entrepreneurship.
If you are looking to ignite your real estate investing, then join us on Investors Unite.
And on today's episode, we have a very special guest that drove 2 hours to hop on the podcast. So we're super, excited to have him on. He's, really well experienced within infill lots, development, new construction. So without further ado, we got Vernon Vaughn on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I mean, listen, you all's list of guests has been a lot of heavy hitters.
Appreciate it.
So I appreciate being in good company,
You're
man.
a heavy hitter yourself.
I don't feel like it always, but I'll take that. I'll take that today.
Well, we can dive a little bit more into it here.
Absolutely.
So you want to start us off with like your background, like where you grew up, who you are?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Washington D.C. area. I always tell people I guess I've always been entrepreneurial.
Okay.
3 times community college dropout.
Oh yeah.
But who's counting?
Yeah.
And I purchased my first primary property. I think I was maybe 21 or 22.
That's pretty early.
Yeah, and I had a very close family friend who at one time was one of the largest landlords in Baltimore City.
Oh.
And when I say very close
That's
friend, it was, right? It was
Baltimore's a major real estate market that
absolutely,
way.
Absolutely. And so him at one point being one of the largest landlords in the city was quite a feat. And one day we were shortly after I bought my first primary house, we were at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Right. And I told him I bought a house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so proud. And he said something to the equivalent of, "Oh, that's cute." And I took a little, offense, right?
Yeah.
Took it personal. But most importantly, we just started talking about more, right?
Yeah.
More about real estate. And it didn't take a lot from that conversation for me to just start digging deeper and deeper and try to soak up as much information as possible. I think one of the first things I realized that I loved about the real estate business was that you can kind of do it on any terms you want to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Over my years in the business, I've known people that have had office buildings with their name on it and dress up in suits every day.
Yeah.
I've known people who wear sweatpants and
Flip-flops.
don't have a business card and will never have a business card.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that you can kind of do it any way you want it to.
Yeah.
It's your business at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
So what happened after you got that first property and you got that, itch, that
Caught the
bug?
bug.
So I started going to like every real estate investor meetup, every real estate investment website.
Yeah.
Bought a few programs, these were the days of CDs and tapes and stuff like that. And so I just kind of started soaking up as much as I could, but ultimately I made a decision to hire a coach, get a real estate mentor who, and so as somebody who's been going to real estate meetups and my list of questions probably had to be like 1,000 questions long.
Yeah.
And the first thing my mentor said was like, well, first thing you need to do is start marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, but I have all these questions. It's like,
right.
Market, right? And so I think I did door-to-door flyers.
Okay.
Did door-to-door flyers. And I remember it was in a neighborhood. So I had to get out like 1,000 flyers. That was my assignment, get out 1,000 flyers door-to-door.
Yeah.
And I went to this neighborhood, and it's in the evening. At this time, I'm working, so it's after work, and I'm, this is probably over the course of 2 or 3 days, but I'm down to my last couple hundred flyers, and I pull up to this neighborhood, and in this neighborhood, once you enter the neighborhood, there's a tree
Okay.
And on that tree is a We Buy Houses sign. And I'm like, well, if there's anybody in this neighborhood selling a house, surely they've sold it to the We Buy Houses sign dude.
Right.
But then I was like, but hey,
maybe not.
Like I could finish up on this neighborhood and be done, and then I'll have my 1,000 flyers done, and then I can get my questions answered, right? So it was less about me actually thinking I was getting a deal.
Right.
It was more about just completing the assignment, and then maybe you'll answer all these questions I had.
Yep.
And so got rid of the flyers in that neighborhood. Didn't expect anything out of it because surely they would have sold to the guy with the sign, and got a call the next day.
No way.
Yeah, got a call the next day. It ended up being a lease option deal.
Okay.
Which lease option deals almost never go as planned.
The
buyer tenant never buys.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes there's sucky tenants also.
Yeah.
Which was in my case. But it started for that first deal, it was a cosmetic rehab. Then from there I moved into from there, I immediately jumped into a rehab where I was over my head. Immediately.
What's like the rehab number? Was it like a 30K rehab to 100K rehab?
So the first lease option deal ultimately ended up becoming a cosmetic rehab, like $15,000.
15, okay.
Carpet and paint. Right?
Yeah.
And then I immediately jumped into a rehab that had a scope of work like $80,000.
Yeah, that is a big
right.
That's a big
immediately, and then that contractor proceeded to get a draw that was way more than I should have given, and did 1 day worth of demo work and disappeared.
We've all heard that story.
And disappeared. But I mean, from there I learned.
It's a learning experience.
Yeah, so I learned. So from the first deal I found, in which the person had a We Buy Houses sign, I said, okay, probably be better if I do We Buy Houses signs instead of going door to door all the time. So I'm gonna start putting a sign up on a stop sign in a neighborhood instead of door to door. And so while I was stuck holding this property with a contractor who ran off, I said, well, I've got these We Buy Houses signs. I might as well put one in the yard of my property. And I was like, I might as well put one at the stop sign at the end of the street. Yeah. And I might as well put one at the next stop sign. I said, heck, I might as well just start putting them all around. Yeah. And I on the fly, I ended up wholesaling 2 properties.
That's awesome.
In that immediate neighborhood.
Well, just from bandit signs.
Just from bandit signs.
So I got a couple questions on that little story.
Absolutely.
So number 1, mentor. It's a huge deal. How did you go about finding your mentor?
I met the mentor at one of the RIAs. One of the meetups. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
One of the meetups.
Was it nerve-wracking for you to like go out there and talk to these people because you knew they were a little bit more advanced?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a natural introvert. People don't believe me.
Okay.
People don't. But I'm a natural introvert. Yeah. And so a lot of times I would go into these RIAs and sit at the back of the room.
Yeah.
And at the end of the meetup, when it was time to kind of start networking, that's usually where I would cut out.
Yeah.
Right. So unless somebody came up to me and said, "Hey,
out.
Nice to meet you," I typically wasn't going up. But just going around enough of these RIAs, you start to see some of the recurring characters, some of the same people, and so I was like, okay, just at least options sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
Right. And that was my first mentor.
And these flyers that you were doing door to door, did you come up with the flyer? Did he kind of guide you?
It was his template. I just added my phone number.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That was it.
Gotcha.
That was it. Yeah.
It was basically just very simple, like, hey, looking to purchase this property.
Exactly.
Call me if interested.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Awesome. So are you still, I'm just curious, like now, are you still utilizing bandit signs or?
No. Okay. No. So now I am doing things like direct mail, pay-per lead, a lot of word of mouth and like agent outreach.
Okay.
All right. But I mean, there are still people that do bandit signs.
Yeah. There are. I mean, you still see them driving down the road all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
And then just get a time frame. What year was this about when you got your first lease option? You're doing that.
So that was probably like 2003.
Okay. So early 2000s.
Yeah.
I feel like back then real estate investing was not nearly as like marketed as it is these days.
It was.
Was it?
It was. Yeah. It was a different. It was. It was. So you've always had the people selling the dream of
financial freedom,
fire your boss, no cash, no credit.
Yeah,
I made $1 million off of one house, and now you've always had that dream. We just see it done in different ways now. But it's
as technology advances, obviously your way of marketing is gonna change over time.
Absolutely right, because at that time, internet marketing was really probably in its infancy. So like any
had to go through that .com bubble first,
right? So any keyword, I'm sure the cost of keywords were almost free compared to whatever you pay for them now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's awesome how you got started into that. So starting from there, I mean, you go ahead, you knock out a couple of wholesale deals, and were you aware of what wholesaling was at the time?
I was. Yeah. I was. Okay. I quickly became aware of what wholesaling was.
Yeah, it's like once you kind of dive into real estate like you did, like you caught that bug, you try to learn as much as you can, and majority of that's just like different exit strategies that you can utilize with these properties.
Exactly. It becomes part of your toolkit.
Right.
Because so once again, a lot of marketing for courses or education was revolved around no cash, no credit. And then you quickly realize, oh, that's wholesaling.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's because in a lot of the marketing, it's mysterious as to what it is.
Right.
Yeah. Up until you get in and everybody, it's signing a contract.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
And what were your thoughts on wholesaling? Is that something that you wanted to, continue to grow, or did you have kind of like your own niche in mind of like what you wanted to get into? Maybe something that interested you more?
I mean, so when I was first introduced to real estate, I was introduced kind of to the concept of that there is a investor cycle that you go from wholesaling to rehabs to rentals. Yeah. And once again, 20 years later, that's still taught, right? That is still taught. And now you quickly find out that that's not true at all.
Yeah.
That you don't have to progress through a cycle at all. You can kind of start anywhere.
You can start with like a 100-unit apartment complex if you wanted to. And as long as you got the right partners in place.
And people have. And people have.
Oh, seriously.
And people absolutely have. Yeah. But I did kind of follow that process right there.
Yeah.
I followed that. Although I did, for what it's worth, I did kind of start rehabbing first.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. But the least option, you had to do a little cosmetic.
Exactly.
And then you got into that bigger deal right there.
Exactly. So I did kind of do that, quote unquote, out of order.
Right.
But I quickly discovered, how powerful wholesaling was.
Yeah.
Right. Because at that point, my contractor had run off with the first draw, and that first draw game was way bigger than it should have been.
Substantial amount.
And so I was like, hey, I need some more cash to replace that draw that he took.
Right.
And at that point, I was relatively new. So for these other two properties I put under contract, it was no way I was gonna rehab those when I was dealing with a rehab that had kind of gone off the rails.
Okay.
And so wholesaling became the strategy during that time
to fund the fix and flips.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
And at this, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, are you building a team at this point? Is it just solely you?
Solely me, part-time investor, still working in 9 to 5.
I was gonna ask about that.
Yep, still working 9 to 5.
Okay, so at what point in time, like, how many years would you say into real estate investing were you able to finally drop that 9 to 5 and go full time into it?
I went full time probably 5 or 6 years into it. Okay. Yeah, and so I was working 9 to 5. I was salaried, which is
it's comfortable.
It can be.
Yeah.
Right. It can be, but also like me, you can end up working like long hours.
Yeah.
And so I used to be at my desk until like 6 or 7 p.m. And I could kind of tell what time it was by the cleaning crew coming in. I was like, all right, that means it's like
time
6.
To get out of here.
That means it's like 6. So I'm like, all right, let's try to be wrapped up in 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So one of my first businesses I started was a cleaning company because I used to talk to the cleaning crew like every single night because I was always there. So that was one of the first businesses I started. And when I started that business, and the business focused on carpet cleaning.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, I'm gonna put up bandit signs.
I just recently started seeing some carpet cleaning bandit signs in our area.
Yeah. Is that you?
No, not me. I've been out of business a long time ago. But I remember at one point in my area, the news was expose on bandit signs.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's
my
mine.
sign.
Yeah.
Those are mine. I hope they don't realize those are mine.
Right.
But yeah, and so that business became a 6-figure business.
No way.
Yeah, I like doing it evenings and weekends.
Wow.
And when I did leave my job, that kind of gave me more runway.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't cutting. It wasn't all right, your last check is this.
Yeah.
And after that, you've got to have your first real estate deal done.
You got to figure it out.
Yep.
Right.
Right,
And so it gave me a smooth runway to kind of get into real estate investing, quote unquote, full time.
Now,
Nice.
how long did it take you to start getting into what you're doing now with the infill lots and the new construction?
So I started learning about infill development, ground up development, back in like 2016.
Okay.
Right. And it wasn't out of a desire to learn about it.
Yeah.
It was out of, so I got through 2008, 2009, 2010, mainly by wholesaling, right?
Okay.
Mainly by wholesaling.
Did you own a lot of rental properties at that time?
I didn't.
Okay.
Just a couple.
Yeah.
And at that time also, I was not in a bunch of rehabs.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
But kind of wholesaled my way through that period.
Yep.
And on the other side, I saw what I considered people to be overpaying.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
And I was kind of like, well, we just kind of went through this. Like, why would you overpay?
Right.
All right. Like, I think we know how that movie ends.
Yeah.
But I saw, once again, what I consider overpaying.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, I was like, okay, I don't want to have to compete on properties.
Yeah.
Right. I can't, or I don't want to.
Right.
Right. I don't want to quote unquote win the property by being the person who was most willing to overpay. Had no interest in that.
No.
And so I started doing rehabs that were once again kind of back going into, for a moment I felt like maybe you're getting in over your head. And we're talking about fire damaged properties. We're talking about extensive rehabs. We're talking about
now you're pulling permits,
stuff with foundation repairs.
Yeah.
Right. And the only reason I was able to get those was because everybody else was like, you're crazy to take those on.
Yeah.
But those were the deals that had great margins.
Yeah.
For a while.
Right.
For a while. That was the stuff I was like, where I was the only buyer for it.
Yeah.
And they made some great money.
There you go.
However, markets force efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So even that doesn't last forever.
Right.
So you get people at first willing to pay as much as you are. So you're not the only game in town for those types of deals. And then you get people that are paying significantly more for those. And for those people, I said, it's no way that they are adjusting for risk. They can't be.
Mm-mm.
Like, you shouldn't make the same amount on rehab that has a $100,000 scope of work that you should on one that has a $50,000 scope of work and takes half the time.
So those numbers just don't work out.
It shouldn't. Because ultimately, when it comes to the scope of work, the larger the scope of work, or the more line items you have, the more room you have for overages.
Yeah.
It happens to the best of us. And so I considered was people were like in the Olympics, the diving, right? If you do a very complex dive, you get points for
The
difficulty,
Yeah.
right? Except those people were just doing a regular, and so it would be like in the Olympics, if the person that does the regular dive gets the same amount of points as the person that does the complex dive, you're like, that doesn't make sense.
Right,
That,
that doesn't add
who
up.
would do that,
But it
right?
was like executed perfectly.
Right.
Gotcha.
What the thing I started to kind of see as a potential avenue was that as I was doing marketing, anytime I came across a vacant lot, right? Like if I'm doing direct mail, if I come across, 321 Main Street, and I call Mr. and Mrs. Seller. And I'm like, hey, I'm interested in your house at 321 Main Street. And they would say, oh, there's no house. It's a vacant lot. And I would say, oh, sorry to disturb you, and hang up the phone. Right. And I realized that, okay, I mean, my guess is everybody else is doing that. There's probably an opportunity there. Now I saw the red tape. I saw the difficulty, right? I was like, what ifs, right? Yeah. What if it's not buildable? What if when they build it, they don't build it in the right place? What if the wall isn't straight? So the what ifs. And it was intimidating a little bit, right? It was intimidating.
Yeah.
And once again, I was somebody at that point that had probably been in the business for over 10 years, that had done some complex rehabs. And I said, well, if it's intimidating to me, it's definitely got to be intimidating to everybody else that has less experience than me.
That's a good way to look at it. It reminds me of this book. I don't know if you heard of it before, Blue Ocean Strategy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, basically you taking that blue ocean while everyone else is with the sharks over there.
Absolutely. Right. And because you can, don't get me wrong, you can try to compete. You can go to I guess the lake that everyone fishes from.
Right.
And and you can scrape out some deals, right? Right. You can scrape some out. Or I mean, you can go to a lake where like nobody or almost nobody is fishing.
Yeah.
And fish from there. And it's never a strategy of you have to do one or the other, but it's just, hey, your options, you can fish from either lake. And so I realized and to this day, I always remind myself of it, that when you identify a challenge, you've also identified an opportunity.
I like that.
Right.
That's true.
Right. Yeah. When you find the pain point, and we know it when it comes to marketing, you look for a pain point, and so we know that. However, when it comes to us, and we experience a pain point, we turn away. It's like, no, that's an opportunity,
right?
To get better, because you're, whether it's finding or sourcing properties or even processes within your business, or even, a part of the rehab process.
Right.
If it's something about it that sucks, you got kind of two choices or three choices: is to accept it, is deal with it as it always sucking, not do it, or find a way to make it not suck. Right. And just get proficient at it.
Right.
And when you get proficient at those things, I mean, that once again, that becomes kind of like your superpower, your opportunity.
Yeah.
And at that point, deals start to find you. People are like, well, for land, I mean, it's only person I know, only one of two people I know building is Vern, right? So I'm going to just send him everything.
When I think of infill lots, I think of you,
Look, sometimes in these Facebook groups, they're like, hey, it's a vacant lot on the moon. Who wants to build on this? And they're tagging me, right? I mean, it's a joke, but and the thing I knew that was different about building from the ground up or infill development, I very quickly had to get picky about where and what I built.
Okay.
Like as rehabbers and as landlords, sometimes you're like, I just take whatever, wherever. You have to widen your net in order to source them.
Yeah.
And for new builds, I was doing just the opposite. I was getting very, 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 very picky.
You got a specific criteria?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
And so typically, like, I like to target on what I call HD, HV neighborhoods, high density, high value.
Okay.
All right. So these are kind of neighborhoods where you've got amenities close by, the popular or the hot restaurants.
It's a more expensive market typically.
Exactly.
A lot of houses in the area, growing population, good job growth.
Okay. Infrastructure already there. And probably one of the most important aspects is because it's high density.
Yeah.
Because it's 90% plus built up. You don't get a lot of new housing inventory. Almost none.
Yeah.
Right.
Almost none. So you take a hot neighborhood that people want to live in, and you combine it with being able to source a vacant lot and put a brand new house on it.
Yeah.
It is very, very valuable. And the buyer pool for that is so much bigger than what you can source.
Yeah. Now, when you're selling a new construction property, like you were saying, I mean, there's not going to be much new construction in that hot neighborhood just because it's 99% built house already. How are you running comparables on that?
Right.
Yeah,
great question.
It's used houses, not technically used, you know what I mean? But like
great question.
Years ago.
So sometimes I've got the advantage of there might be another infill builder in the neighborhood.
Okay.
So I always get to, kind of piggyback from them, right? I always get to say, okay, they're proof of concept. They sold the house for $800, brand new, 2,000 square feet. I can do the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have that, but you've got renovated existing inventory. Right. Which you can always compare it against. Or you've got inventory that's just in good shape.
Yeah.
That you can compare it against. One question people ask me, is there a premium to new construction? And I always say not necessarily.
No.
Not necessarily. The other day on Facebook, somebody said, well, a new house will go for 15 or 20% more than an existing property. No. Not saying it won't. I'm just saying not necessarily.
Yeah.
Like in real estate, having a gut feeling is important. Like you got to be able to validate it with data.
Yeah.
You got to be. That's a very important part of underwriting. You have to absolutely be able to say, I've got a feeling. All right. All right. Where's the data to prove it? Because if you can't prove it, it's just that. It's just an opinion.
Right. So I just want to do like a step-by-step process of, just going through that whole routine. So let's say a wholesaler brings you a vacant lot. It's in an area that you like, right? So what's like your very first step?
Okay. So for me, I love it that I'm able to boil it down to what I call the 4 F's, right? Okay. The first F is find it, right? And by finding it is to define your criteria. Okay. There is a lot of land out here, right? If you look at the globe,
it's a lot.
A lot of it, right? Yeah. And so you can't just be like, I'll take land because everybody will send you land. Right. And you've got to be able to identify like, okay, where is it? Yeah. And so my criteria of it being high density, high value area, like right now in my markets, I probably look to actively build in about 10 to maybe 15 neighborhoods.
Okay.
Right. And so that's
not too big.
That's manageable.
Yeah.
And most importantly, I can keep my finger on a pulse of 10 to 15 neighborhoods. Right. I can literally know how much the end product is selling for. I can know what's available. I can know how much I should pay for it.
Right.
I know the market dynamics, right? And so when the opportunity presents itself, I can pounce on it. I don't have to. Sometimes people, if they're covering too many areas, it doesn't matter if it's new build, doesn't matter if it's rentals, doesn't matter if it's flips. When a deal comes along, they have to then start research.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's gone.
Yeah.
Right. And knowing kind of like what a deal looks like, even before it comes across.
Helps out a lot.
Yeah. And so you can pounce relatively quickly. You can make confident offers.
Yeah.
So the first thing is finding. And so whether I'm sourcing myself, looking on the MLS, I still find great deals on the MLS.
That's surprising.
Or putting feelers out to wholesalers and other agents. I can give them a narrow criteria with the goal of, if I tell you what I'm looking for, when I get that notification on IG Messenger, Facebook Messenger, I'm like, probably what I'm looking for.
Right. Should be good.
Right?
Yeah.
So that first F is find. Next one is doing feasibility, right? While there's a lot of land out here, not everything is buildable.
Okay.
If I am building in areas or looking to build in areas that are already 90% built up, I do have to answer the question or solve for the problem. How come there isn't a house on this lot?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes we find out that there was a house, it was demolished previously.
Yep.
Right. Cool. Other times we find out it's a very good reason it's not a house on this lot. This lot has issues. It could be easement issues. It could be engineering issues, environmental issues. It could be a lot that's just not buildable by right.
Right.
But knowing what feasibility to do. So typically, even before I do feasibility, even when I'm kind of talking to a seller, number one, making sure in my contract I've got the right to get feasibility, to do feasibility. With a house, sometimes with a house I'm buying as is. Sometimes I do sight unseen, not very often. Yeah. But typically in a house, I am making a buying decision pretty quickly. Okay. Like on a house, my inspection or due diligence may be when I meet the seller, I walk through the house and that's it. Right. Yes, I want it, or no, I don't. Right. With land, it takes more time to do feasibility. Yeah. With lots, when we're looking at it on Google Earth and the MLS, in a GIS system, you see the lot with lines drawn. Right. When you walk outside, there are no lines. You just see a patch of dirt. Yeah. Right. And so you hope that is the patch of dirt that you're buying. Right. You hope that
the lot it lines ends
at right. You hope, but you don't know.
So do you get a survey then during that time?
Yeah. So number one is backing up is making sure I've got time to get due diligence. Right. 9.99 times out of 10, if a seller isn't willing to give me time to do due diligence, they're hiding something. Right. Yeah. They're hiding something. Yeah. Land is typically very heavily bought in cash. Mm-hmm. Right? When you're buying cash, when there's not a bank saying you need to do this, when there's no loan underwriter, you are allowed to make a lot of mistakes. Right? If you're buying land, a title company will just ask you once, do you want a survey? If you say no, that's typically it. That's it. Like, okay. That is it. That is it. That's it. They're not going to say, we think you should. Okay. We assume if you say no, you know what you're asking for. Right. So we often find in land people that, maybe had a dream of building their dream home or just building a home. And life happens. Things change. But some sellers just have a problem property, and they figure they were suckered into it, and they will in turn and they will sucker somebody else into it. And so making sure I want 45 to 60 days for due diligence. One of the very first things I'm going to do is get a survey. Okay. I want to make sure, number one, the lot is where I think it is. I want to make sure that nobody is encroaching on a lot. Yeah. When you've got a vacant lot, it could be vacant 10 years, 20 years, neighbors will assume, I guess it's going to be vacant forever. Land, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So when they replace the fence, on
push
purpose.
It out a little feet.
Yeah. Right. Feet. Oh, right. So typically when people are doing fences, they're not getting surveys. Right. So they're like, I guess my lot ends at that tree. Yeah. Like, trees don't care about lines. Yeah. Right. But if the new fence is there, and then if the neighbor on the left does that, and the neighbor on the right does that, and if they each do it twice over 20 years, before you know it,
that lot's gone.
Right. And and when you go to build, and if you say, well, hey, your fence is on my lot, you'd think that it's very simple to say, okay, you've got to take it down. And sometimes well, no, my fence has been there for 30 years. I got a permit for it. Prove it. Prove it. And it's so. Yeah. And in this country, I mean, right? Yeah. Courts will say, you got to go through court, right? Yeah. But so doing that survey, so making sure, number one, we know where the lot is located, and there's nothing encroaching on it, and that it should be buildable by right. Okay. So very important for me in my business is whenever I want to build a house, I've always got to ask permission. Okay. Right. We call it permitting. Right. Right. So I've got to show them the design for it, show them the engineering, send it to them, answer any questions about it, or if it's anything they say, revise it. Okay. I've always got to ask for permission, even when it's buildable by right. If for some reason it's not buildable by right, you go through a whole nother level of scrutiny. All right. And they can say, well, based on today's code, the lot isn't big enough, and it doesn't fit within our master plans are done for like 20 years. Yeah. And it doesn't fit the vision that we see for the next 20 years.
The neighborhood or something.
Right. And sometimes they don't care, if the lot is too small by a couple feet.
Yeah.
Now, once again, in a country where there's a shortage of housing, you would think they'd be like, look, okay, great. You get to build a house. You get to solve the housing shortage. We get tax revenue and permit revenue. Yes, you would think. And in many places, that's
not the case.
We don't care.
Yeah.
It's only 10 feet. Tough luck.
Mm-hmm.
Try again in 20 years. Right. So, and then of course, neighbors usually when you're getting a variance, asking permission to build,
they all have a say.
They have a say. Yeah. And so if let's say a neighbor has lived there for 6 months. So let's say they bought a house that was new. Those same neighbors will say, I don't want any new houses being built. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't, it's like, well, neighbor, your house is new. Yeah. But I don't care. I don't want any new houses.
Just got to go give cookies to every neighbor.
Built. Right. And so, where I am is, once again, I get to be picky. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to. So when those come my way, I say thanks, but no thanks.
Yep.
Well, maybe one day, but not today.
Yeah.
Not
okay.
Today. Yeah.
Now I feel like the one mainly concerning thing for me, just with the idea of development in itself, because we've been talking about it and we've had a couple different opportunities here and there where we could have maybe moved forward with something but didn't, and it's just all the prep work, and I feel like it's very expensive. And oftentimes it doesn't even work out, right? Because you could run into any of those scenarios where it's like, oh, maybe it's not buildable, or the neighbor doesn't want it, or they're not going to allow it to be built for whatever reason.
Right.
And it's like I already went through paying an architect to come up with all these designs. I paid for that survey to get done, a million other different things, and possibly not buying the land yet because hopefully you did the due diligence first. Right. But some people we've heard of, other people have bought the land and then found out later on, they couldn't use it for what they intended for.
Correct. Which is what? So
I guess what I'm trying to say pretty much is how is there any way to really take away all the risk?
It is. So your due diligence. So getting your surveyor out there immediately.
Okay.
That's one of the first things you do.
But you could still lose money on that per se. How much would you say is a survey typically?
So typically, when it's all said and done, so from the time I evaluate a lot to when I'm done building and getting my final certifications, I'm likely going to pay my surveyor somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000 when it's all said and done. However, typically when it's not buildable, I am probably going to know about $1,000 into it.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
They'll be able to tell you beforehand.
Yep, and I'm going to be okay. And only losing $1,000.
Right.
A few years ago, there were 3 lots we were looking at from the same seller in a great neighborhood.
Yeah.
Great neighborhood. Great price.
Yeah.
Great price. Called the surveyor and said, hey, here are 3 lots we're looking at. And before the surveyor even had to make a site visit, they didn't even have to get in their car. They were like, okay, out of your 3 lots, 2 have wetlands on them. Okay. And in the other one, I was like, okay, well, all right, so that means we got one. He's like, no. He said that one has a paper road. So it's a road that's, on paper and can be built any day. Hasn't been built yet, but can be. Can be at any given moment.
So he made an easy $3,000 like that.
Well, yeah, I think, he only, I think it cost us like $300.
$300. Oh, okay.
$300, but
he never even made it to the property.
But but I was happy.
Right.
Happy. Mm-hmm. And when we disclose, and this is the thing that cemented that because I remember the seller kind of being hesitant to give due diligence. They were kind of arguing us down on how much time we could have. And I think we kind of agreed to 30 days.
Yeah.
Okay. And but when we told the listing agent, we're like, hey, here are the issues with the lot. Listing agent said, okay, I'll talk to the seller. And then texted back, I feel 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
And said the seller said they can get it figured out or straightened out. And I was like, oh, so you knew about this.
Yeah.
Right.
It
wasn't
how
like,
you gonna get wetlands figured out?
Right. It wasn't because you'd expect the answer to be like, oh my gosh, you didn't know. And it was like, no.
He knew about it.
Like, so you knew about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And, my surveyor said, but no, they can't get it figured out.
Right.
They can't. And so when we released the contract, you would think that, and this was these properties were listed, so you'd think it would come off the MLS.
Right.
It went right back up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right back up. No
Disclosure.
No
disclosure.
disclaimer at all.
No disclaimer.
Wow.
And ultimately somebody bought it in cash.
Jeez.
And then they relisted it a couple of years later.
Yeah. Did they sell it? Do you know? Or no?
They probably haven't.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They probably never will.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Never will.
And something else to kind of go along with what I was saying earlier. So let's say survey goes well. They tell you where the lot lines are. Hey, it's buildable. You can put this kind of property in this location. And then you're like, all right, awesome. Next step, let's go find an architecture and have him draw up a design. Which those designs are expensive.
Yeah, I paid my architect about $10,000, which is pretty good price.
That's cheap.
Pretty good price.
Yeah.
Pretty. So
not bad.
This is my second architect. My first architect was a little bit cheaper.
Okay.
Mhm.
Look, we lost him because he went back to work for somebody.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Right. I was like,
Okay.
I kind of saw that coming one day
Right.
because he was an architect that used to come out on site.
Right.
I mean, and one day he said, I'm going back to work. And I was kind of like, we'll pay you more, man.
I need you. Come
We'll
on.
pay you more. But yeah, in my area, $10,000 is pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
pretty good.
from there, you would take those architectural plans to your city or township or borough, whatever. You're in.
Even before you get there, you do a site concept plan, site development plan.
Okay.
So site development plans it takes your surveyor's work. This is where the lot is. This is where the major right-of-ways are.
Yeah.
With your architect, you talk to your architect. You say, hey, architect, I've got this lot. Here's what I'm looking to build.
Yeah.
Or better yet, what can I build?
Yeah.
At that point, the only thing the architect is doing is giving you a basic square or rectangle or triangle, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Architect's gonna say based on your zoning,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've got this lot that we've got verified by your architect based on the setbacks, based on the zoning. This is like what you could build up to.
Yeah.
Right?
Potentially.
It comes down to the size of the footprint.
Okay.
Right? And so it's going to be a square, rectangle, and the architect is going to put your square or rectangle on that lot, on that site plan.
Yeah.
And you're going to send it off to get basic site plan approval.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of your first things that's going to determine if you can build what you want to, because you can have a lot that is buildable by right.
Yeah.
So yes, you can build on it, but because of the lot shape,
It's like certain restrictions.
because of setbacks, because of existing utility lines,
Mhm.
or if part of the lot is wetlands, the house that you can build isn't anything anybody would want.
Yeah.
So yes, you can build.
It's like, but good luck selling it.
Good luck selling it, right? So it's important to know. It's important to identify that up early.
Yeah.
And your architect is going to help you determine that by doing a site plan.
Okay.
Yep. But
Gotcha.
once you've got your basic site plan, and by building in high density areas, I avoid a lot of wondering what if gas, electric, and water are available to me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All the neighbors' houses have that.
It's there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times that lot, if it once had a house, I know it's there. Worst case scenario, it's at the street.
Yeah.
I don't build in low density areas where I have to deal with well and or septic.
Mhm.
For instance, in my area, you can only do a perk test and check if you can do septic for about 2 to 3 months out of the whole year. That's typically like January to maybe April.
Mhm.
So, for instance, if I want to put a lot under contract now
Yeah.
that
You'd
didn't
to
have a
wait till
perk
then.
test,
Yeah.
I'd have to be like, hey, we got to wait until like January at the
Yeah,
earliest,
like
or
6-month due diligence.
or roll the dice. And some people do.
Yeah.
Some
That's scary.
It is
Yeah.
right. And once again, I don't need to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to build 1,000 homes a year, so I don't have to take risk.
Right.
Right. I can really pick my spots.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, which is a wonderful place to be. Like when it comes to rehabbing, the areas I'll literally rehab within 50 miles of Washington, D.C., right? Everything from, in the last couple of months, I sold a $1.3 million rehab, and I sold a $330,000 rehab.
From the ground up, though?
No, these are just rehabs.
Oh, just the rehabs.
Right.
Okay,
So,
wow.
right. So,
Good job.
but big, but once again, to source the number of rehab deals I want, I got to be open to, as long as the numbers work, I got to be open to the higher end stuff and the entry level homes.
Gotcha.
For new builds, I can say, hey, I know this is my spot.
Okay.
And anytime I start thinking about, well, maybe you should, try a property that wouldn't make as much, maybe you should build, it wouldn't make as much money, but you can find a lot more of them. I say like, okay, well, have I exhausted the inventory for the ones that will make money? It's like, no. Well, then why would you? Because they take the same amount of effort, right?
Yeah.
Same amount of effort. One obviously pays
a lot
more than the other. Yep.
Okay.
Now, I was curious, do you do multi-families, like small multi-residential families too?
Looking to go there.
Okay.
Looking at so the great thing about learning any new skill, right?
Yeah.
Any new skill set is so you've got the low hanging fruit, and so low hanging fruit is single family detached. And in some cases, that's all you can do with it, right?
Yeah.
So low hanging fruit.
Depends on the zoning.
Exactly, low hanging fruit, right? So the other areas that you can go with new build, and building new builds, it's just a process like anything else. Like I'm as a builder developer, people give me more credit than I deserve.
You think so?
Oh yeah. So. I mean, so first of all, they think I'm like pouring a foundation on framing a house.
Yeah.
I'm not, right?
Yeah.
I'm not. One time I was at a property and my painter was working, and I picked up a paint roller.
Yeah.
And like a minute, he said I was doing it wrong. All right. But so I always use, because I mean, people assume I had a background in construction. I did not.
Nope.
And so I always use this example, and it kind of brings it home for people, is that at a symphony, the guy in front conducting the symphony with the wand, okay, can he play every instrument in that symphony? Probably not. Right? He may be able to play a couple. And if he can play them, is he world class at it? Probably not. Right?
Yeah.
But that man or woman at the front of the symphony knows what the composition sounds like when it's played right.
Yeah.
He knows what it sounds like when it's played wrong.
Yeah.
He knows to be able to direct each instrument section, speed up tempo, bring up volume or whatever. Right. And that's what he knows. He is a visionary.
Right.
He's a visionary.
Yeah.
And the people playing the instruments in a symphony, they are probably great at what they do, right? Might be a great percussionist or saxophonist, but they would probably have a skewed view of what the piece should sound like when it's played right. Yeah. Like my section should sound like this, and everybody else's section, whatever. And so, as a builder developer, I think that's the most important thing I do.
Yeah,
is that I'm a visionary in that. Okay. Like I've identified which neighborhoods to even build in.
Yeah.
Right. So I've taken out of thousands of neighborhoods in a 50-mile radius. Yeah. I've said these are the 15. I've said this is the product, not too big, not too small, that people will want.
Yeah.
Here's what it's gonna go for. Here's what it should cost to build.
So you kind of just became an expert at like your one niche.
Putting the puzzle pieces together.
That's
right.
it. Yeah. So, for instance, I mean, like my guy pouring a foundation, he couldn't tell me that. He can execute his part all day long.
Yeah.
He can pour foundation, but he's not going to be able to tell me how much I should pay for framing.
Yeah.
Right. And so, as visionaries, I mean, that's the most important thing to do. If you ever take a look at a skyscraper, do you believe that the developer was in the crane, lifting iron 100 feet in the air? He wasn't. He or she was in an office putting together the financing, pulling together the contractors to execute it, hiring the permit expediters, hiring the right architect. That is what he or she was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
It reminds, like, that whole concept just reminds me of this one Bruce Lee quote is, I don't fear the man who knows 10,000 kicks, but I fear the man who has done one kick 10,000 times.
That's it.
It's like you just have to become an expert at that one specific thing, not try to know every single piece of the puzzle.
And more importantly, is to hire the person that's done that kick 10,000 times to execute for their part.
Yeah.
Some like on my rehabs or new builds, sometimes I'm conflicted about how much time I spend in the field because I remember, like, I don't know how to do drywall, I don't know how to run electric, don't know how to do plumbing.
Yeah.
So me standing over your shoulder accomplishes what?
Nothing.
Because I've got to say, if I can stand over your shoulder and teach you something, I've got the wrong trade person.
Yeah.
I should not be able to teach you anything about your job. Now, it's, still there's a component of quality control to it,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
But
you don't have to be an expert to know what looks good.
Exactly. Yeah. But exactly. Once you've seen it done wrong a couple of times, you're like, you're able to identify that. Yeah. That's not it. But no, it's not about me standing over or anybody. It's the most important thing I can do on a day in and day out basis is generate revenue by finding or sourcing the deal and then making sure it's underwritten properly.
Right. Now, I know we went with the first F, so what's the next F then?
Well, we did the first two.
So, so we did finding, we did feasibility. Funding. Gotta
That's important.
Gotta fund it. Yeah, when it comes to building from the ground up, your options for financing there are numerous options. What option works often depends on both the borrower, meaning their track record, maybe their assets.
Well, what do you saying track record? Did you do your first infill lot by yourself, or did you partner up with someone?
Partnered up.
Okay.
Partnered up. Use cash.
Gotcha.
Use cash. But so for instance, like so when I first got in the real estate business, when it came to flipping a house, your only real option usually ended up being hard money. Like banks did not. They just didn't. They didn't like the idea.
No.
Then Wall Street discovered hard money. They're like, people are paying 12% and 4 points, and we've got $1 billion, and our loan to value is only 65%. Like, yes, right?
It's a great deal for them.
Yeah, it's a Wall Street jumped into hard money, and then Wall Street would lend on almost anything, right? And to a point, they still do. When you move to new builds, a lot of lenders will say they've got a new build product, right? They say we've got it, and then you start talking to them, and depending on you, depending on the asset, they might start to pull it back off the table, right?
Yeah.
I learned that kind of like in 2009 and 2010, as we were kind of going through that whole foreclosure crisis. Many hard money lenders still kind of hung their shingle. They say, yeah, we're funding deals. Right. And then you take them a deal, and they would move the yard line. They would move it. And you'd be like, hey, but I thought you said y'all would do 75% LTV.
That was yesterday's
and now you're telling me 50% LTV.
Yeah.
Right? And it almost got to a point where in order to do a deal for hard money lender, you almost had to have so much cash you didn't need them.
Yeah.
Right? But sometimes it's like, hey, I've got almost all of it, not all of it. And so you still needed them. And they made great money. Their risk was low.
Gotcha.
When it comes to new builds, any lender, bank, hard money, private money. So their worst scenario is that they give you money for dirt, and that dirt is deemed worthless. That is what they're worried about.
Yeah.
On a rehab that's partially completed, if they've underwritten it correctly, they can take it back. Sometimes they can sell it at a profit, right?
Right.
If it's just a patch of dirt, number one, if it can't be built, it's worth less than worthless, right? If you've got a patch of dirt you can't build on, that means you've got to cut the grass, cut the weeds. Yeah. You might have to erect a fence.
Pay taxes.
If somebody decides to dump in the middle of the night, dump 1,000 tires on it, guess what?
That's yours.
It's yours to clean up.
Wow.
Yeah. Right?
That's
true. So it's worth less than worthless.
Yeah. It's just a headache at that point.
Yeah. With rehabs, you can reposition it, right? I mean, you can say, okay, instead of selling, it's going to become a rental, right?
Yeah.
But with land, it just becomes toxic. Nobody wants it.
Right. Other
builders recognize how much trouble the lender is in, and they don't do them any favors. They don't do them anytime somebody brings me land and they're like, they've got plans or that they were going to build on it.
Yeah.
I'm like, so what's the real story?
Yeah.
Like what's like, I just changed my mind. I'm like, no, what really happened?
Right.
Yeah.
And not that I'm trying to be me, but once again, I'm not trying to take on anybody.
You don't want to lose any money, obviously.
Headaches.
Yeah.
Right. And so when it comes to funding your options, you've got everything from the big banks, regional local banks to hard money lenders. Okay. And the best way to go about finding a lender is to kind of interview them or kind of mystery shop them and find out what they're looking for. Yeah. Right. Before you ever meet with them, because if you're the lender, if you're the banker, and I'm sitting across from you, and and you're telling what I need, I mean, if I don't have it, I'm putting my cards on the table. Right. So it's better for me to find out what you require, and to have that before I sit down with you.
Right.
Otherwise, not waste the
Both
meeting.
times.
And sometimes it just means having a strategic partner.
Yeah.
So like even on a rehab, you can lender says I need somebody who's done 3 flips, 4 flips. If you haven't done any, that means strategic partner.
Yeah.
Strategic partner that has a track record of flips.
Right.
Sometimes people think with partnering it's just, hey, I want to do rehabs or new builds and rentals. Let's partner. It's like, and it would be like baking a cake, but everybody comes to the table with flour. It's like no eggs.
Yeah.
Don't have.
You need the other ingredients.
Right. Don't know what you have, but you don't have a cake. So it's best to find out when seeking out lenders is what they require, and to get it. And whatever lender you can meet their requirements is your best option. Yeah. Might not always be the cheapest, but that's your best option.
They're the ones that will actually get it done.
Yeah.
Okay. I've also heard another way of funding is a lot of people, they'll save up money over time or maybe from wholesale deals, just acquire enough capital where they'll actually buy the land outright.
Yeah.
So they'll go through, get their surveys done, make sure it is buildable, buy the land outright, and then they'll use that as collateral to actually get a loan for the rehab and the build.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so lenders will do what they call as built or to be built appraisals. Okay. And so if you own a land, let's say you own a land, there's a few ways to look at it. You can own land and it not be entitled or not be permitted, right?
Yeah.
And so many lenders will say, okay, maybe we'll loan you some of construction, because you do have collateral.
Yeah.
But also it's not permitted. So they may be very conservative on how much they're willing to lend on that collateral. Yeah. So, and they may say, okay, well, you own the land, you got this lot for $150,000. Right now, based on it being unpermitted, here's a loan to value we're willing to give. Okay. But if you come back with plans, maybe we're willing to lend on some more. Mm-hmm. If you come back with permits, we'll go up to the highest.
Gotcha.
And don't get me wrong, some banks would love to refinance you 3 times. Yeah. Right? So if you come to them once and you say, hey, now I've got plans. I want more money. Sure.
Of course.
Just pay this little application fee, maybe whatever, right?
Yeah. Right.
And if you come back to them a third time, sure, we'll give you more money, pay more fees, right? I think the best way, if you know that going in, right, it's best to kind of know what your options are going into it, and say, okay, based on that, it's probably best for me to buy the land. Of course, even before I buy it, do my due diligence, but go through plans and permits and come back to the bank with an asset that they feel the most secure lending on. Yeah. Okay. You're probably going to get your best rates. You're probably going to have your most options. Right. Also, if you've got any type of construction draw or if you've got any type of debt service, remember, during the permitting phase, if you've got the meter running on debt service, like, do you think the people at the permit office care that you got debt service? No. I mean, there's no urgency at all. Yeah. Right. And so that's probably not the time to have debt service. My first deal was a lot. It was a lot for only like $47,000, but it was bought in cash. Yeah. And that took months to get permitted.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Months. I remember, so as we're going through the permitting phase, we've got an architect, design can take, okay, let's back up. Well, your engineering. Yeah. So even making sure this lot is buildable, and doing all the engineering necessary, that can take 2 to 3 months. Your design can take 2 to 3 months, right? So we're talking 4 to 6 months. And then when you drop it off for permitting in my area, that can take 3 months, right? So you can be talking well over 6 months just in between engineering, design, and permitting. Now, even with cheap money, if you've got the meter running, I mean, that's just taking away from the bottom line, right? But I remember the first one we built after months of getting all this permitting stuff together. Yeah. And I had the plans. I had my 3 sets of plans. Yeah. And I remember I buckled it in a passenger car seat like it was a baby, right? Yeah. And I'm about to drop it off. And I'm like, I should have permits any day. And I remember dropping it off to the permit department, and they called me before I even made it back to my car, right? And I'm like, hey, Mr. Vaughn, on your permit application, you didn't name your licensed Maryland home builder. And I was like, well, I mean, we've done at this point close to 100 projects. Like we don't need a builder. We are our own GC essentially. Yeah. And it doesn't work like that. They say, are you going to live in a house? I said, no. They said, well, you've got to have a licensed builder to build for you. I was like, okay. And I called up a friend who had built a house recently, an investor, and I said, hey, what did you do? Yeah. And they said, I had a builder that let me use their builder's license. I was like, great. How much did that cost you? He said $25,000.
No way.
I was like, okay, did they do any work?
I thought he was gonna say like $250 or something.
No, 25. I said, did they do any work? He said no. Wow. So for that 25,
just for the license.
We're in the wrong business.
I know.
Now, right, and so I had to go through. So the next thing I did when I heard that, I was like, well, let me go online and see what it takes to be a builder. Yeah. Like so I became a licensed builder like by accident because that was not the plan.
You have your license for building?
Yeah, I gotta have it, right? Because that wasn't an option. Yeah. Right. Not to pay $25,000.
How much was it to get the license?
It was like $800.
Oh shoot!
It was worth it. It was paperwork. Yeah. It was paperwork. That's it. And But I was happy that I didn't have the debt service meter running while I was going through that process, because even for the home builder, I think it was they were like, well, we review applications, the 4th week of the month, and I had like just missed it. So that means they weren't even going to lay eyes on it until the next month.
Another month.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but that's but when once again when dealing with financing, I think the most important thing is to reverse engineer what is needed and give whoever exactly what they need. That's the best way to financing. Yeah. And you've got options from once again from private money to hard money to local banks to national banks.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So there's a bunch of different options.
Yeah.
Bunch of different options. The best option is always what's available to you.
Right.
That's the best option, right? An option that is the cheapest, easiest, but not available to you. It's not an option.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we got finding, feasibility, funding.
Yeah.
What's that final?
So the last F is the flipping, right? So it is the process. It's the process of either it's the process of building the house, or even if you're wholesaling dirt, it's the process of flipping a land to another builder. Yeah. And once again, so right back to, and so this is where people, once again, really give me more credit is the build out of the house, right? So once again, they think I am pouring a foundation. They think I'm up on a roof frame, and they think I'm pulling
you're Mr.
wire.
Bob the Builder or something.
Right, and I'm not. It's really about finding.
I mean, now you got your builder's license.
Right, but
I know.
But even okay. So for the builder's license, so there is not a test. Yeah. It's not like a driver's license, right? So driver's license, you got to be able to drive, park, parallel. There is no, Maryland is not saying build me a house, frame me a wall. Yeah. There is not a test. They just really want to know that you've got what's called clean hands. So that means no lawsuits, no recent bankruptcies. If you do, explaining the bankruptcy. They want to know that as a builder, they can trust you not to take deposits and then go to Vegas, right? That's all they want to know. They want to know, did you hold any other license that it was revoked? Were you a builder in another state and it was revoked? That's what they want to know.
You have to renew it every year?
Yep, every 2. Every 2 years. Every 2 years. And but the flipping, the build out of the property, it's a framework. Yeah. It's framework. If anything, it's project management intensive. Right. So it's just knowing at what pace and tempo the project should move. It's knowing when and who to call at what point in the project. I tell most people, if you've done a rehab, it's not so much different from it. Yeah. So for me, the biggest difference is to wrap my head around going from the difference in a rehab and a new build. Number one, the time it takes for anything to even get to the point where you can build anything. Yeah. So in my area, I spend about $40,000 in between engineering, design, and permitting before I can even get permission to build. Wow. So by the time I get a permit in my hand, I've typically spent about $40,000. If you've done a rehab, $40,000. You may be done rehab $40,000, right? Yeah. But at that point, I'm just starting 40 G's, and I'm just starting.
That's the scary part. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It can be. It can be. But if you know that, once again, kind of doesn't matter. If you know that, what you're doing is financially feasible. Okay. You recognize it as part of the game.
Big risk, big reward.
Yeah, and it's not. Ideally, it shouldn't be risk. Yeah, it shouldn't I try to mitigate risk, right? So even before I get to the point of ever spending the first dollar, I want to make sure. Once again, I can have my hunches, I can have my gut feelings. I can say, hey, I know this neighborhood like the back of my hand. Great, I'm still doing a pro forma. Yeah. Because I've still got to be able to point back to, hey, on the day I decided to write the check to buy the lot, on the day I decided to do this was the data. Even if the data changes, this was proof that it was a good idea to do it. Yeah. Not I had a feeling.
It's kind of like reassuring yourself almost.
Absolutely. Because there are some times where you want to do a deal, right? So that's the hunch.
Yeah,
right?
we run across.
I want to do it.
It's like I want to do this one,
and it doesn't pencil out. It doesn't pencil out. I mean, I think we've all got like properties we want to build, rehabs we want to do, rentals we want to own, right?
That's why you can't mix emotion with business.
Right.
Can't. I mean, it's great when they both line up.
Yeah, it is.
It's great when they don't.
You got one that's like, oh, I want to do that. Numbers work out.
Yep.
End of the day, you're like, oh, let's go. I'm excited.
That's it. Yeah. It's great when they both line up. Look, if I had to choose between it, I mean, there are properties I've done where I'm like, you know what? It's okay. I'm not crazy about the neighborhood, but you know what, man? It pencils out.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, and so when I see that, I'm like, I love it now. Right. I love it because I
love that paycheck.
Right. We like I love on Facebook when I get hundreds of likes on a finished product.
Yeah.
Okay? I've been in one of your houses. I don't know if you know, when Antoine had the big meetup in Maryland, I was like, I'm going to pull up,
Which one? So,
is that
or was it DC?
That big basketball court one?
No. It was kind of a narrow road. I don't know what street it was on, but it was a 2-story. I think it was a lot of ranchers on that street.
Okay, I'm trying to remember.
And I went through it. I was like, yo, this is nice.
Okay. I remember that one. I remember that.
Yeah, the cookout and everything. Whole bunch of people showed up.
Yep. So I remember that one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I love when I get Facebook and IG likes. I love it. But it doesn't match up to the bottom line being as beautiful, right? It does not match up.
Yeah.
It does. I love it when the bottom line is gorgeous.
Yep.
Right. I love it.
Now let's break down a deal. Like, I want to know the best deal you've done. Like,
what'd you buy the land for? How'd you find that land?
Okay. So probably the best one I've done, and I'm doing like right now 2 or 3 that are all like very similar numbers.
Yeah.
Kind of like same neighborhoods, but so the best deals are like buying a land for about 120.
Okay.
120 to 130.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Build out cost of about $400,000.
Okay.
And that build out cost has gone up incrementally every year. Every year.
Heard materials, labor.
Even when the materials don't change much.
Mm-hmm.
And my materials, I always tell people, I always joke. I'm like, yeah, man, this light fixture is imported, from like the nearest Amazon warehouse, right? They think it's so expensive. I'm like, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And it's like a lot of materials I use, tile, light fixtures, whatever. I use the same in a $300-something thousand house and a $1.3 million.
Really?
The finishes though, like on the one I saw, amazing. Like your finishes are really
like
good.
quartz countertops.
Mm-hmm.
I would use in any price range. Tile is tile. I mean, I'm not using marble. It's like ceramic tile.
Right.
That looks like marble, but ceramic tile.
Yeah.
And that goes from, once again, $300,000 house to 1.3.
And it can look just as good, but not just be so damn expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's I think it's so when we talk about finishes, and some people get this wrong, is that the craftsmanship will make inexpensive material look very expensive.
Yeah,
that's true.
Bad craftsmanship will make expensive material look cheap.
Yeah.
So like, good old subway tile. Right?
Yep.
Subway tile. Just having a tile person install it in a herringbone pattern. Look super fancy.
Yeah.
Super fancy, right? Getting brush gold hardware.
Mm-hmm.
From Amazon. Like a $30 light fixture.
Yeah.
Or a $60 faucet.
Yeah.
Like just looks super expensive. So anyway, getting land 120 to 130, spending about $400 on a build out.
Yeah.
And a after build value of between $800 and $900.
So you're at 520, 530
plus then like permits, architecture
included. So when for my build out. Yep. Okay. So here's one thing. So people will say, well, how much does it cost per square foot to build a house? I'm like, no such thing.
Yeah, no.
I said, we can talk line items.
Yeah.
I can talk to some of my line items.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to take all those line items and assign them to a square footage. And like, nope. It costs it costs what it costs.
Right.
It costs what it costs. Because like sometimes, like in my area, in Maryland, in a couple of areas I work, well, we have something called impact fees. Impact fees, money goes to school and emergency services like fire, police.
Oh, okay.
Those impact fees can be between $12,000 and $20,000.
Wow.
In some areas, they're $40,000. Right.
That's crazy.
Right. Some people I talk to build in areas where there's no impact fee.
Yeah.
So if we're ever talking about how much per square foot to build, I'm like, well, are you talking about just your sticks and bricks, or are you also including your permit fees?
Mm-hmm.
They say, well, I'm not including permit fees. I'm like, okay, well, I know already our build numbers are going to be considerably different because I'm depending on where I'm building, it might cost me $40,000 in impact fees plus additional permit fees. It's mind-boggling that somebody is not paying that. But if I ever did a pro forma and didn't count that, I
could get screwed in the end.
Yeah, I could miss it badly.
Right.
So in that $400,000 give or take, ideally I'm including my sticks, my bricks, my impact fees, my permit costs, a porta potty. Like if I have to have it in order to build that house, it's got to be counted.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
Got to be counted. Yeah.
Okay, so you're
listed for 800,000. You said.
Yep. So So I'm doing 2 right now in neighborhoods that are about 10 minutes apart. Build cost is sort of lot costs were the same.
Yeah.
Build costs are like 99% the same.
Yeah.
The floor plan we're building are the same.
Right.
One is slightly modified. But there's about $100,000 to $150,000 difference between the 2 neighborhoods. So one is going to be $799. The other one will be $900 or $899 to like $949.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And so those types of deals all
like
day
a
long.
$200,000-$300,000 spread there.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, gross.
That's really good.
Gross. Yeah.
Right.
Still
gotta take away
always got your
taxes
debt service. Always have your debt service.
Yep.
And how many are you doing at a time typically?
About 3.
3 at a time.
How many do you think, if you had to roughly guess, do you know how many you did throughout your lifetime? Like full-on development?
I think I'm like just like done and in a pipeline. I'm probably like on number 9.
Wow.
Yeah, so not a lot. I mean,
yeah,
No,
I mean, you're still making. When you're making that much money, though, you only need to do one a year.
You don't really need
You're
to
good
do
to
that
go.
much.
yeah, I mean, but I'll do them. I mean, let's get it. Let's do.
Of course.
Yeah, I don't feel at any point I'm doing too many.
Yeah.
So for deals, whether new builds or rehabs, I always want to have a pipeline and not a warehouse.
Okay.
So like I don't want to drop 10 rehabs in at the same time. Or 10 new builds in at the same time. Like ideally is 2 or 3 on the way out, 2 or 3 coming in, 2 or 3 in the middle.
Okay.
That's ideal. You don't always get to choose timing, but it does come
Depends
a
on
point.
when the deal comes.
Right, but it does come a point where you're like, whoa.
This is too much.
Yeah. So there have been times when I've looked at deals and I've been like, I'll pass for now.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good deal, but it's just I think I need to finish it because what happens is in our mind sometimes we think we're doing multiple deals at a time when in fact we're not. Right? When in fact it doesn't feel like it, but one or more may be sitting. Doesn't feel like it. Like in your mind it's being worked on. In reality it's kind of sitting.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you've got a few sitting, one of the ones you might sell really pays for the other 3 sitting. Right. And so you can kind of argue like, hey, maybe I didn't need that other one because it only slowed me down on 2 or 3 more.
Gotcha.
And those costs were the price. I didn't need it.
And in an ideal scenario, like let's say like a wholesaler brought you this piece of land today, from that day till the time you were having this property sold, what's the like average length of time you would say?
So my average usually what we call closing to closing, day I buy the dirt to the day I sell a finished house, probably comes in right now at about a year and 2 months. Right, year and 2 months, closing to closing, which is the because when it talks about timeline, I've got how much time it takes to finish a property, but probably I think one of the most important numbers is closing to closing,
Right.
because I can always compare it against a flip, right? With a flip, my things like engineering, design, permitting are drastically less, right? And so I'll probably never be as fast as the average flip. But even within that 1 year, 1 month, 1 year, 2 months, I do want to get to a point where things like engineering, design is going a lot faster.
Yeah.
The opportunity there is to build the exact same floor plan. And so once I'm building the same floor plan, I can put those plans on file and get approval a lot quicker.
Quick. Yeah.
One of the biggest returns on investment for me is hiring a permit expediter for about $1,000, and they handle getting it through permitting, answering to revisions.
Okay.
But then after that, the next big opportunity is the actual construction time. Yeah. So right now, my construction time is, I'm gonna say, usually like 8 months, right? Okay. I should, in theory, and I've got a template, in theory, I should be able to build a house in about 4 months, right? It's the type of thing I've been chasing after,
right?
Yeah,
right. And it takes, and the first time I looked at it, I was like, geez, in order to do that, you gotta have everything in place.
It's gotta be aligned.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. You gotta have everything in place. Yeah. Right. That's something to aim for. It's not impossible. There's no way around to do. Yeah. It's like, right, that becomes the goal, because for these deals, they make great money, and as you can do them faster, they make even better money. Right? I mean, that becomes a profit center in itself.
Yeah.
That becomes a profit center in itself.
Okay.
Is eliminating holding cost.
Yeah, and
cutting them down.
For these big profits, 200, 300,000, have you ever thought of just doing a burst strategy and keeping it, and then just building up the portfolio?
But here's the deal. Some of those neighborhoods that provide those type of ROIs on a burr would be almost cash flow negative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
With the mortgage. Yeah.
And also, if I'm doing the math, it would take hundreds of months. I'm not making that up. It would literally take almost 100 months to net that same amount.
Right.
So, and that's the gift and the curse of some of these neighborhoods is what happens is these are $1 million neighborhoods.
Yep.
Now, and when I say $1 million neighborhood, I got to be clear, not a exotic car in a driveway, $1 million neighborhood. Prius in a driveway, $1 million neighborhood, right? The $1 million neighborhoods aren't what they used to be.
Yeah.
But these are neighborhoods, once again, the end product will sell for anywhere between $800 to $1 million.
Yeah.
But the rents on them, number one, the buyer pool is small.
Yeah.
For those people that they can usually afford to buy. I mean, they're in a position to buy.
Right.
And the rents on them may only be.
Can I guess?
Go ahead.
I just want to guess. I'm gonna say like 4,000.
I'm gonna say 52.
Right. So somewhere in the mid 5,000 range.
Mid 5.
And but let's guess property taxes.
Oh.
I'm gonna say 11,000.
There you go.
Yo, I'm right.
So at today's rates, that's
not cash flow.
Nah. That's not cash flow.
That's not cash flow.
And it's not a big buyer pool.
Yeah.
So it's not finding a tenant in necessarily 30 to 60 days. Right? It might be 90 to 120 days, right?
Yeah.
And so it is. I mean, on a good day, you break it even. Yeah. But realistically, you're probably not.
Just sell that thing.
Right. And then when it goes vacant, which it ultimately will,
yeah.
Once again, it's finding a tenant in 4 months.
Yeah.
And so
I feel like that's when you guys start venturing into that multifamily to actually reduce some of the cash flow.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a few ways to go there. So there are neighborhoods where I would not make money building. So these neighborhoods were $1 million neighborhoods, $800,000, $900,000, $1 million neighborhood. Within 20 minutes is a neighborhood where that same newly built property might sell for $500K. Yeah, maybe 550.
Yeah. I know what you mean though, because we even have areas around here where it's very similar.
Yeah,
you could drive 20 minutes, have a $600,000 house, drive 20 minutes the other way, and it'll only be like 330, 350.
And in major metropolitan areas, that's exactly what it's. Because if you're in a rural area, right, you're not used to it. If you're in a major metropolitan area, I mean, those neighborhoods exist very closely to each other.
Yeah.
Like geographically, they're not far apart. Neighborhood dynamics, they're night and day. But so there are properties that, like newly built, same square footage.
Yeah.
I might be able to sell for $500 or $550. Now remember, my construction cost is like $400.
Yeah.
And
That's
guess what?
It's kind of close.
And my person pouring a foundation, like he doesn't care if he's 20 minutes in this direction or 20 minutes in that direction. All right, he doesn't care about that. Also, he doesn't care if I'm selling this one for $900 or this one for $550.
Right.
His cost of the same foundation is going to be the same.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same. And so even if you gave me the land in that neighborhood, still wouldn't be worthwhile.
Yeah.
Cost of permitting is the same. In those two different scenarios, out of all of my line items, they're going to be like 95% the same.
Yeah.
So maybe in $1 million house, I have to get my appliance packages, $7,000 as opposed to $3,500. Big deal.
Right.
Maybe I'm using a composite siding, a hardy siding, which might be $20,000 instead of a vinyl siding, which is $7,000. Still not enough to move the needle at all. So in those neighborhoods, but now here's the deal. Those are neighborhoods where if I can get, first, like those are great rental neighborhoods, right? Where you can still buy existing inventory and make great cash flow, either market rate tenants or a voucher tenant, right? So for those are neighborhoods where I am right now working on a project, doing a modular build, right? So doing a modular build where I'm able to do the same product for about $220,000 on very cheap dirt, like dirt for $30,000.
Yeah.
And two options: to sell for the $550 or to possibly rent it out at $2,500 to $3,000 a month. So those are potential. Those are neighborhoods.
Like that 1% rule, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. And those are neighborhoods where, in theory, if and I'm still working on the first one, but from there I can say, okay, I can continue to sell these or just build a portfolio in these neighborhoods from the ground up. So even though you've got landlords fighting over existing inventory, you've got cheap dirt.
Yeah,
think $15,000 or $30,000. Where a builder like me is like, I can't build here. I don't want it.
Yeah,
I don't. Even if you gave me the dirt, I don't want it. But looking at modular construction, I'm like, I'll take it.
I can save some money.
I'll take it, and those neighborhoods. So it's like 10 to 15 neighborhoods that fit that high density, high value. 800,000. But then it's like literally hundreds of neighborhoods that don't fit that criteria, but could potentially fit the other criteria of cheap dirt that nobody's looking for.
Yeah,
modular construction, either sell it or keep a portfolio, or take funds from the larger, new builds that just will never make sense to hold.
Gotcha.
And funnel them into there.
Awesome.
Now, I know we're coming to a quick close, but I want to know, like, what are your goals, your personal business goals for, let's say, the next 5 years?
So I guess one of my business goals would be to start to build in other areas.
Coming to PA?
Look, so I'm looking at growth markets
Yeah.
that I don't necessarily have to get on an airplane
Harrisburg.
to get to.
There you go.
I like the thing I love about the area I'm in, the DC area, right?
Yeah.
It's Mid-Atlantic, so it's logistically it's a great jumping off point for a lot of places. And in my market, we've got 3 major airports, like 7 professional sports teams.
Yeah.
We've got the federal government who is always spending, and then outside of that, we've got a very strong tech sector. We've got amenities, so even within my area, and then 100 miles, 150 miles north, 150 miles south, it kind of feeds off of that economy, and so places like Texas, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, they're on the radar. But even before I get there are a lot of places closer to home.
Right.
Pennsylvania, Southern Virginia,
New Jersey
that have some. Jersey, yeah, it's there. It's
possibility.
An option. Yeah, possibility.
Okay.
But there are a lot of options, and
Delaware's right over there too, right?
Exactly. Delaware is also a huge. It's a growth market that's not mentioned. Because
no one talks about Delaware.
Texas, Florida, South Carolina, just what everybody talks about.
Right.
And not everybody's willing to make that jump, and there are other.
And that's good. Let them talk about that, because now you got this blue ocean over here.
Exactly. And so one thing building has taught me. All right. So number one, it's taught me a few things. Number one is get comfortable being uncomfortable. Right.
Yep.
So me thinking it's scary to build. What if this happens? What if that happens? And then you get through it. And you're like, that's not that bad, right?
Yeah.
And then so you got to ask, what else is out there that is scary at first, but it's going to be good once I'm on the other side of it. And when I think about building, and when I'm looking at like modular construction, I like the idea of modular construction, is because I'm offloading like 80% of project management, right? And so when you offload project management, it becomes very conducive to building outside of your local area, right? You don't, because for instance, a modular construction, both single families, small multi-unit, and even 50, 100 unit apartment buildings, modular construction is a very real thing.
Yeah,
it happens more than most people realize. And it's like, okay, so now you've got this product being assembled in a factory, right? So when you're building on site, you've got your contractors who are small 1 and 2 person operations.
Yeah.
They don't have, project management. They're like, what's that? Scheduling. They're like, what's that? They get there when they get there. They leave when they leave.
Right.
But then when you look at modular, it's being done in a factory.
Yeah.
You've got guys clocking in and out for lunch, and so it's taking, it's using. You've got this whole, you're outsourcing it to people that are way better at project management than you'll ever be.
So you're saving time and money going with that route.
Time and money, and most importantly, what you free up in project management, you get to spend on acquisitions and underwriting.
True.
Which is like, it's relatively easy to outsource or hire a project manager. It becomes much harder to outsource and hire for executive level functions. Like you could hire a CEO today. They would want a 6-figure salary, and they would guarantee no result at all.
Right.
Yeah.
They would, right? It would be compensation is fixed. And if you don't like me, fire me. But I'm not telling you for $150 a year. I'm not guaranteeing you're gonna get anything. Right. Way easier to hire or outsource project management, and instead you spend more time in the CEO role. So that's one goal, is to explore other markets as a place to build a portfolio.
Okay, that's a good goal to have.
Yeah, I think so.
You'll be able to increase that volume pretty substantially.
I think so.
That's
and it's I mean, and finding a sweet spot. So you mentioned, kind of the duplexes or the fourplexes.
Yeah.
So like Wall Street is in love with multi-unit, right? and they've got so much money to deploy. It wouldn't be wise of most of us to try to compete with them, right? For them, cap rates is like secondary. Yeah. They're like, where can we park this money? And it wouldn't be wise for us to participate in that race to the bottom. But, land you can build a 2-plex, 3-plex, or 4-plex on, it's not going to come up on a radar of Wall Street. Right. It's a hedge fund. For them. It's too small. Yeah. They would never consider it. And I think that becomes an opportunity for smaller investors. I think that's like right-sized investing to where you can get those lots at a reasonable cost, build them out. The construction of a 4-plex isn't too much different from the construction of a single-family house. It's when you get to more units, you start to get to commercial code. It gets way more expensive and way more complex. But I think that's kind of like a sweet spot. And that's one of the things I've got my eyes on.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're going to have to do like another podcast in the future about the modulars.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
But yeah, we truly appreciate having you come on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
That's a great conversation.
Yeah, guys.
It went really well.
Yeah.
Definitely learned a lot.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to connect with Vernon, we'll make sure to leave his information down below. Check out his Facebook. Are you on Instagram too?
I am. Facebook and IG. I'm posting stories all the time.
They say he's getting those likes.
Get a little days in the life like some of his stuff.
There you go.
Check out his stuff. But with that being said, make sure you guys go subscribe, like this video, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Peace.